Hi, good evening, everyone who's joining us. Good evening, everyone who's joining us. We'll just be beginning shortly. Just give us a couple of minutes, and we'll start. Hi, good evening, everyone who's joining. We'll just be beginning shortly. Thanks. So we're just going to share a video before we proceed, before we begin. So just give us a second. Thank you.
30 जनवरी 2020 भारत में पहला कोविड-19 केस और फिर शुरू हुआ अनिश्चितता का दौर। लाखों दुकानों दफ्तरों में ताले, स्कूल कॉलेज बंद। इसका सीधा असर उन लाखों बच्चों पर पड़ा जो 12वीं कक्षा की पढ़ाई पूरी करने के बाद एक उज्जवल भविष्य का सपना देख रहे थे। वो बच्चे नहीं जानते थे कि आगे क्या करेंगे, उनका भविष्य कैसा होगा, नौकरी मिलेगी या नहीं। लेकिन इसी साल कई लाख बच्चे ऐसे भी थे जिन्होंने HCL TechBee के लिए आवेदन किया और चुने गए बच्चों ने HCL Technologies, जो कि भारत की बड़ी टेक्नोलॉजी कंपनियों में से एक है, के साथ अपने करियर की उड़ान सुनिश्चित की। अब भविष्य को लेकर इन बच्चों के मन में हौसला है, डर नहीं। HCL TechBee HCL का एक अनूठा करियर प्रोग्राम है जो 12वीं के बाद सीधा HCL टेक्नोलॉजीज के साथ काम करने का मौका देता है। यही नहीं, HCL के साथ अनुभव हासिल करते हुए इन बच्चों को बिट्स पिलानी और शास्त्रा यूनिवर्सिटी जैसे नामी संस्थानों से हायर स्टडीज करने का मौका भी मिलता है। इस साल कोरोना महामारी दोगुनी ताकत से आई है और हमारे देश के 12वीं के बच्चों का करियर एक बार फिर अनिश्चितताओं के दौर से गुजर रहा है। क्या आप भी उनमें से एक हैं? तो आप क्या चुनेंगे? ग्लोबली रेप्यूटेड IT कंपनी के साथ एक निश्चित करियर या अनिश्चितता का एक नया दौर? फैसला आपका है। HCL TechBee प्रोग्राम में आज ही आवेदन करें और अधिक जानकारी के लिए www.hcltechbee.com पर जाएं।
So thank you, everyone. Good evening and welcome to the fourth volume of the TechBee webinar series. As you know, our guest today is Ambika Natarajan, Vice President at HCL Technologies, who will be discussing everything about TechBee Early Career Program, the syllabus for the Career Aptitude Test for application, and your career with HCL. Now, before I begin and welcome Ambika, I want to tell you a little bit about her. So Ambika heads the Enterprise Social Collaboration and Knowledge Management function at HCL Technologies. In this role, she drives conceptualization and fulfillment of various programs and initiatives that deliver value to the HCL enterprise through collaboration and knowledge exchange. Her areas of expertise include building knowledge scorecard, benchmarking, hotspot identification, community programs, social analytics, and toolkits, amongst others. Ambika also drives various platforms and automation solutions for HCL's workforce. Ambika and her team also conduct the annual Best Practices Conference, an event that mines, cross-pollinates, and institutionalizes the best practices across the enterprise and is recognized as a key seed platform for ideapreneurship at HCL. Ambika also manages CIO communications and is a member of HCL's Women Leadership Development Network. So without further ado, we welcome you, Ambika. Happy to have you here.
Thank you, Sanad, and good evening, everyone. Namaste to all of you who've joined us live. I think it's going to be a next 60 minutes of interesting conversations, dialoguing, and I'm more than excited to look at the kind of questions that you're going to put across in the chat window that Sanat will pick up. Just an extension to what Sanat said, and he did introduce me. So in my current capacity, I manage the learning services for New Vistas. And in that role, so TechBee program, and there are many other such programs that I manage for India and the New Vistas locations that are coming up in the various geographies. So, yes, learning is at the core of what I do. Whether it was in my previous role, the avatar of a knowledge management and a social collaboration head, or in this current role. So there's one constant that defines me, and that's learning and how we can make learning effective, meaningful in the industry that's evolving continuously. Over to you, Sanat.
Certainly. So, Ambika, since we were talking about your introduction, and I did briefly touch upon that, could you tell us about your journey at HCL so far? Because of course, a lot of the people who are interested in joining HCL through TechBee would want to know what their journey would be like as well. Please do share with us, what the
Right.
past 17 years for you have been like.
Sure. Sure. So I started off my career in HCL in 2004, and one of the major tasks that I had was to put together the knowledge management program. For many of you who don't understand, what knowledge management is all about, in a very simple term, if I have to say that, it was to look at ways and means of ensuring that the people who are working in various projects get increasingly productive, they're able to create more value, and that's through collaboration. And this I'm talking in 2004. Today, all of you are completely tuned in to collaboration. You do it day in and day out, right from the time we wake up to the time we go to bed. Either we are on WhatsApp or Instagram, Facebook. We're on different social media channels exchanging. We have our own peer groups. But to formalize that and to ensure that it adds value to you and to the workplace in a meaningful way. So that was something that I did. So going back to the fulcrum of where it all begins is that learning is the only constant because change is the only constant. So therefore, all the practices and processes that we put together, whether it's a TechBee program or any other initiative, is to ensure that our workforce, the employees who contribute and make HCL what it is today, right? So they are learning what is right, they are delivering what is appropriate, and they are continuously creating value for our global customers who are all over. So that's key. And having said that, my journey in HCL is something that I will always cherish because HCL is the organization of for opportunity, especially if you are open to this entire mindset of relearning, unlearning, new learning, because you have so many different avenues in this company. When I started off with one account, and within it was just a matter of time when I was managing this for the entire organization. And in that role, I had the opportunity to solutionize, to build platforms, to create products, to create, initiatives that Sanat mentioned. We've got a platform called the Good Practices Conference, where employees across the globe share what is working well for them. And through doing that, they enrich the work experience and the expertise of other employees that they don't even know are in some remote corner of the world. So HCL symbolizes innovation. HCL symbolizes opportunities, and that's what I have seen, in the last 17 years. Because if you have it in you to work hard, to keep the focus, and as you focus, be smart about learning and applying new things, then this is the place to be. So that's how the journey has been.
Thank you, Ambika. I'm sure a lot of people are quite inspired to hear about how your transition from an entry level, and then from there you've now reached the senior leadership level at HCL as well, doing so much across the board over the last few years. So could you tell us a little bit more about how this transition came in and how you spoke about getting into first managing one thing, and then from there managing it for say the entire organization globally as well. How was that transition, and specifically being in a hardcore tech company and working in something which is not just working on tech but also a lot on the productivity and people part? So how was that experience and transition for you?
Sanat, you've raised a point which actually kind of dovetails into another point that's going to come up very
Sure
soon.
thing. Sure thing.
So whenever we have an opportunity in front of us, right, and especially in the professional work environment, there are multiple factors that come together, right? So there are a set of team members, there are a larger set of extended project teams that you need to work with. Now, in order to do all this, there are certain underlying factors that bind all of it. Think of it like a recipe, right? So in a recipe you've got multiple ingredients that have to come together for you to create that recipe. But it's also important that those ingredients are added in the right sequence, right? Imagine those of you who know, those of you who have an interest in cooking, you will be able to relate to this example. Is that something as simple as creating batter for your idlis and dosas, which are now famous globally, right? So when you're preparing a batter for an idli or a dosa, those of you who know about it know that you don't add the salt first. You first grind the entire batter, and it's only towards the end that you sprinkle the salt. Because if you do it the other way about, then your idlis are going to be like rock stone. Okay. And you will not
Absolutely.
get those fluffy, white, most sought after favorite breakfasts. And it is touted as a superfood as well, right? The well fermented ones. So
Said.
it's something so simple, but it's very, very important that the sequence with which you evolve and the sequence with which you take all the ingredients of the organization, and in this case the project, the environment you work in, how do you put them together to evolve to be what you are today? And that comes through certain basic attributes, right? And those attributes are: one has to always be open to learning, one has to be always open to adapting, right? One also always has to be compliant with all that is needed. So
Certainly.
these are some of those very, very essential things that makes for a good professional. And once you have these ingredients in place, then the rest of it is all improvisation, right? You want to add carrots to it, you want to create colored ones, you can do whatever you want, right? You've got green idlis today, you got orange idlis today. So you can do whatever you want. You can create idli upma, you can create pizza idlis. Now, why do I say that? Because it sounds as simple as that, but there is an art to it and there is also a science to it, right? So, in my journey, also, I have been very fortunate to be able to identify white spaces. And white
Hmm.
spaces are nothing but opportunity areas. Opportunities which, when you work on a solution, will create an impact for the organization. It will create an impact for the project, for the client organization that you're working for. And HCL is replete with such opportunities because we don't call our employees, we call them ideapreneurs, right?
Hmm.
Because we value the ideas that come from every mind. It doesn't matter whether you've just entered the organization or you're a seasoned employee in the organization. It's irrespective of that. We value your thoughts, we value your ideas, and we help you shape those ideas to create more value for the company, right? So if you are an innovator, if you are a creative person, then you have a space in HCL. If you are somebody who likes to do structured work, there is an opportunity in HCL. If you are an experimenter, you have an opportunity. So that's the landscape that I call HCL. And I have seen one or many of these flavors which I've been able to leverage, which I continue to go and discover. Because by nature I'm a very discovery oriented person, and
Absolutely.
I love experimenting, and that's what has shaped my journey to where I am today.
So this actually takes me to my next question. Is this, thirst for knowledge or, for experimentation? Is this what brought alive the training COE, the NV Learning Academy, as we call it internally?
Yeah, so the training COE, so it's a center of excellence, right? And what
Yes.
is excellence? Excellence is whatever you deliver has to be top notch, right? So when we say top notch, it's top notch with respect to a frame of reference. right? So today, if I say, hey, I'm number one, I'm saying number one with respect to what? So there's a reference. So when we thought about and when we put together the Center of Excellence for Training, it was for multiple reasons. One of the things that we all know,
That
and
we
it's
all
so
know,
out
and it's
there,
so out there.
Sanat, there's an echo suddenly.
Oh, is there?
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
I'm
okay
sorry.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's okay now. So this entire training COE therefore was born out of the need to create, the entire training methodology and the framework, which will ensure that any employee or any applicant who goes through, any trainee who goes through this process, comes out in a way that they get productive from day one, right? So that, because Sanat, as an organization, we do take graduates as well, right? We take people of different kinds of background. For instance, people who've taken a break and want to come back to the workplace. We've got different kinds of talent that we attract because HCL is an equal opportunity employer, and we look at capability when we hire people, when we bring in people, and all other factors do not matter. Capability and competency is what matters most to us. So we took that as a reference and said, if we have to get people to be competent and capable, what are the various things that have to go in, which will help this person excel in the job role? And that's how the Center of Excellence for Training was born.
Sure. Great. And could you tell us more about what the COE actually does for HCL? I'm sure for the uninitiated, it may not ring a bell, but if you could just take us through that for very briefly.
Right. So the COE looks at the entire job landscape. It looks at what is emerging from a technology perspective, from a tool perspective, process. So all those capabilities that come together, and with that, the person gets job ready, right? And there are multiple such jobs. For instance, today, when I say that I'm an infrastructure analyst, while the role could be called an infrastructure analyst, that analyst itself could have a Windows flavor, could have a network flavor, could have a Linux flavor. Or when I say that I'm a tester, so the tester could have, a core manual testing flavor or a automation testing flavor or a product testing flavor. So every role has lot of variants. So what we do as a center of excellence is that we are constantly looking at what are the various job roles that are there today, what are emerging, what are the variants of these job roles, what kind of skills are needed for people to be able to perform these job roles. And when we talk about skills, we're talking about the core skills, which is a technology skill. We're talking about process. We're talking about soft skills. So, how should a person present something in a role like this? Because certain roles involve higher order of communication. Certain roles need more written skills. Certain roles need more listening skills, right? So different kinds of roles have different densities in terms of what they need. So putting all that together and through that, creating our training program, which is actually a capability development program. That's what goes into designing the multiple training programs that we run for thousands and thousands of people who apply for us and ensure that they get job ready. So that.
Thank you. And now I think with that we can jump right in to what today is all about. We're here to talk about the TechBee Early Career Program. So please tell us how, from your perspective, how exactly did TechBee come to life? Uh,
Sure. So the TechBee program, so this was a program that we started designing and putting together in 2016. It took us a year, and in 2017 we launched it. But what went into the entire TechBee program was some very fundamental and essential components. Uh, we've been and we continue to train, I told you, different kinds of entry level workforce. So we've got graduates who come from different universities and from different locations, different boards. So we've got a lot of heterogeneity or diversity in terms of the people who come in for our training program. And as they come in out there in the market, we also realize that these tech bees are the digital natives. because they've
Mhm.
been born in the digital era. They've been born with the internet, with the Googles of the world, and they understand technology. Whether they use technology the way I mean, like anybody else, that's a different story. But they understand,
Mhm.
they relate to it, so they are what we call as digital natives. And
Right.
hence, we also realize that their ability to learn a very focused job based skilling program will be extremely high, right? So because it was no longer about an academic credential, because this entire program is designed to make somebody job ready.
Mhm.
So with that end point in mind, we started working towards creating this whole TechBee framework,
Right.
right? And in year one, when we took it and we rolled it out, the success story was amazing. So every tech bee who joined us, so they performed so well in the roles that they moved into the organization. So we realized that there is so much opportunity here in terms of bringing tech bees, the way they settled in, the way they contributed, and they continue to contribute. So this was another talent that we thought we should give them an opportunity through the skilling program and make them job ready. And for that, one of the important exercises we did is that we took those job roles, right,
Mhm.
which we believe TechBees can take up. And it's for those job roles that we started doing the skilling program. And in the last 4 years, these job roles itself has expanded from where we started to where we are today.
Mhm. Mhm. Sure. Thanks. Thanks for giving us this insight. I actually remember speaking to Shiva sir last week, a couple of weeks ago rather, and he had mentioned that how it was also Mr. Nadar, HCL chairperson, who had actually, the founder,
Yes.
who actually, it was his brainchild. He had thought, and he had kind of questioned it in the sense that why can't a 12th pass graduate enter right into the workforce after school, if they're brought up to speed with the right skills, because like you said, now we are living in a digital first world where someone is exposed to, say, a smartphone or technology in a way that we haven't seen before. So definitely this is worth leveraging.
Absolutely. The idea, yes. So and the idea and the entire direction, so it came from Sir, from Mr. Nadar, and we put that together and ran it. And with his continued guidance and with Roshi Nadar's guidance, so we've taken it and we're growing to where it is today because the idea did come from there.
Sure, sure. Thank you. And could you tell us what exactly are we looking for? What is HCL looking for in a potential tech B candidate?
So HCL is looking, so it's not about a Tech B candidate anymore, right? Because a Tech B is getting skilled for a job role in HCL. So that's
Mhm.
the first thing that I want to modify here, Sanat,
Sure, sure.
right? So which means that when if I'm a Tech B and I'm getting selected for the skilling program, I have to go through the same rigorous training that any other person is going to go through,
Mhm.
because end of the program you will have to prove that you have the competency and the capability to deliver the job, because you're going to go into a job role, right?
Right.
So the end point, which is the destination, is the same whether you're a tech B or a non tech B. It is to get
Mhm.
into the job and start contributing to the job and be productive and grow in the job, right? So, for that, there are certain standard expectations from any person who wants to get into a professional environment like this, right?
Mhm.
So, and that is to align. And what does that alignment mean? So, from you're getting from a campus, you're getting into a corporate environment. So, there is a transition that is happening, right? So during this transition is where the entire training program is coming in. So what
Right.
happens in that training program is there are multiple aspects of training. It's like in a school or in any other institution, you will have a timetable. In that
Mhm.
timetable there will be multiple components, right? You could have a physics, a chemistry, a mathematics, a art, or a sports, and all that, right? Here also there are certain things that get covered, but it's not a physics like that, but it's all aligned to what all you should know before you hit the project, before you get
Mhm.
into the job. So the ability and the perseverance that is needed for you to learn, absorb, demonstrate, that becomes now a very crucial factor,
Sure.
because this entire program is not knowledge based. This entire program is application based. You got to be able to apply whatever you learn, because it's you're going to be in live projects, right?
Mhm.
So the expectation from every person who wants to sign up, be a part of the training program and get into jobs at HCL, is that to take all those components, work on whatever is imparted to them, practice, and not just practice but demonstrate that they have been able to absorb, and then apply that, right?
Sure. Sure. So,
Yeah.
with that, could you tell us maybe a little bit more about what exactly goes into the making, of a class 12 graduate into a full-time employee at HCL?
What goes into it is obviously there are technical skills, there are tools that go in, then there are professional skills, right? So, in professional skills, we talk about, so we say communication skills or soft skills, but we in HCL call them professional skills, because in English also there's something called applied English, right?
Mhm.
And in soft skills, there's something called derived soft skills. So each TechBee or any of these employees, when they get into the project, they will be working in teams. Just let's take an example, right? They'll be working with a project team. So
Mhm.
interpersonal skills, effective team communication is a derived capability, right? So to communicate is an essential, but how to communicate in a professional environment when you have multiple modes of communication is a derived capability. So, all these go into getting ready for the job, and all these elements are also covered as part of the training, which is aligned to the job role.
Sure, sure. Thanks. So, Ambika, could you also, with that, take us through what one can expect when they get into the TechBee program? Say take an example of X who comes in to the training. What would their day look like when they come into the classroom training, followed by the internship period, and then, of course, when they're a full-time employee?
Sure. So there are multiple roles to which tech bees get trained for, right? So
Yeah.
you've got infrastructure roles. And for those of you who, because I know IT means people think programming, but we all forget that today, if you are able to talk like this through a live environment, there is a massive infrastructure, right? A series of networks, connectors, routers, is massive server infrastructure, which is where the software itself is hosted and it's being run from there, which is enabling us to do something like this. So infrastructure is another is a big area. It's a happening area. Today, an application can come and go, but infrastructure is something that will remain for eternity. Yes, it will undergo upgrades, but infra is at the backbone of a lot of things that have to get done in the IT world. So there are infra roles, there are programming roles, there are testing roles. It's like, I'm sure you understand testing. You buy a mobile and you realize that it's faulty. So it means that the product has a bug. So as a consumer, you will get very upset. So, what goes into testing the software? What goes into testing the applications that are built? So, there are testing roles. There's a product testing, there's an application testing, there are other, inner aspects of any hosted environment which you got to test. So, there are multiple flavors of testing. So, there are testing roles. And then there are applications that need to be supported, right? So, which means that continuously you got to monitor them, you got to support any issues that come in, route it to specific groups, or even do an analysis. So myriad of roles. I'm just giving you a few examples. There are also data roles where you'll have to look at data, put them together, clean them, create very logical interpretive data sets, because that has to go for analysis. You got to do visualization, plethora, multiple roles and role flavors. When I say role, the role could be a constant, but they could be different flavors of the role. So
Sure.
TechBees, like any other workforce, also go through all these roles. And for all these roles, there are certain constants. So, Sanat, the professional skilling component, there is a common set. So,
Hmm.
communication is key, right? Whether you are able to read and interpret, listen and respond, right? Write a report. So, all those are essential components. Over and above that, the technical component. And then there are the tools. So, you will learn tools. You will learn how to work on, say, a virtual environment, say, on any cloud platform provider. Today, I'm sure all of you know there's an Azure cloud, there's an Amazon cloud, there are Google cloud, there's a cloud foundry, there are multiple cloud services that are there. Based on whatever is needed, you are trained on those particular cloud solutions. Then there are the programming stack. If you are mapped to a programming kind of environment, then you learn what goes into creating an effective piece of software. And it's not just coding, but you also learn what are the do's and don'ts that you should always remember when you write software, right? So there are coding practices, there are efficiency practices. So these are the different things that go in when you get trained, and that training is completely aligned to the roles for which you're getting trained.
Sure, sure. So, thanks, Ambika. So, again, for anyone who's joined us right now, Ambika was telling us about what exactly goes into the making of a tech bee, and also what your day looks like in the life as a classroom trainee, or when you're on internship,
Yeah,
or when you join in full time. And
yeah.
what I gather
Janet,
from that is, yes,
sorry, go on. I thought there was a latency. No, no, I just wanted to add that. So what goes on in a classroom, the day in the life of a tech bee in a classroom is therefore a mix of all these things. So, which means that you
precisely.
will have professional skills training. There'll be a mentor, a trainer who will tell you what to do. They'll give you case scenarios. There'll be technical mentors who will put you through. They'll teach you first, but then you'll have to demonstrate it then and there. So, the learning, especially where it's lab oriented or practice oriented, is heavily learning by doing. Even for theoretical subjects, they will be case based learning. So the entire program is stitched on learning by doing only,
Absolutely.
right?
The focus
Yeah,
is practical learning because you have to apply
absolutely.
everything on live projects as
Absolutely.
well. So, yeah.
Right.
Great. With that, could you also tell us a little bit about the training methodology, the LMS that we do use, the learning management system that is available to students? Perhaps share some insight on that as well.
Sure. So all our content is digitally published. We have our own learning management system, right? So which means that our learners can access that content 24 bar 7. So that's the first thing. So you don't have to worry about books and shipment and printouts and all that. It's all available. So it's planet friendly and anytime. So you can access the LMS and look at the content. But over and above that, there are certain other learning aids that we've added as part of our to make your learning experience, basically to enrich and give you a deeper learning experience. For instance, we've got these periodic weekly tests, right? So these are more like self checks. Because it's important that what you learn every week gets added on to the
Mhm.
subsequent week. Many a times, it's very funny, Sanat. Sometimes, I learn today and then I come back tomorrow. After tomorrow's class, I forget what I learned the day before, right? And we can't afford that. So, what we have, therefore, are for some of the more complex kind of modules, we have interesting games which these learners can play on the learning management system. It's a self solving games that we have introduced. And then there are weekly, self checks that they do. And this is to ensure that when they complete that week of learning, they are completely aware and strong on all that was covered, because the next week is going to be another fresh set of areas, right? So
Mhm. Mhm.
every week on week on week, it's added learning, and the practice, the quizzes, the games, and other things that are built in, the doubt clarification sessions that we create with our faculty team, all that is to ensure that you are progressing in your learning quotient, in your learning index, right?
Sure.
And so that it's a complete reinforcement that by the time you finish the classroom training and get into on the job training, which is your internship phase, you are ready to rock, right? So that's the whole
Sure.
premise.
Sure. Thank you. So my next question is actually a bit about before you joined TechBee and what it kind of takes. So we've had a lot of questions from our viewers about what exactly they should be preparing for the career aptitude test. So could you perhaps give us a lowdown on what exactly what subjects these students should be looking at while preparing, and what kind of questions maybe they could expect?
Sure. So in the the HCL CAT, right? The entrance test that you go through before you get into the interview session. So we've got two parts to it. So one part of it, which is the aptitude test, it has three sections. The first section is a verbal reasoning, your verbal aptitude. Then you've got your qualitative aptitude, and then you've got your quantitative aptitude. Now, how are these sections different from any of the other tests we take or the other tests that are there in the marketplace? These tests are primarily centered around your ability to apply what you have learned in your high school, right?
Sure.
In fact, we find that from the 10th grade onwards, right, the 10th standard coverage of math or any of the other subjects which are related to, and in math itself, you'll have arithmetic, you'll have algebra.
Mhm.
So if it's all applied questions on those areas, right? So it's
Sure.
nothing to do with theory, it's nothing to do with definition, right? It's not a test of your memory either, but it's a test of your ability to apply what you have learned into simple scenarios.
Sure.
Okay, so that's how the entire test is designed. For instance, let me give you an example. For instance, let's take arithmetic. So we have under the quantitative section, there is a subsection where you'll get a series of questions on arithmetic. What kind of arithmetic questions will you get? If I have to give you an example, I say that, okay, I have a person A, and this person A, takes about 100 difficult multiplication problems and solves this in 10 minutes, right?
Mhm.
So, how much time do you think this person will take to solve, equally difficult division related questions, right?
Sure.
So, how many things, how many such questions can he solve, right? If he has 1 minute, provided we take an assumption that he takes double the time for division, right? So,
Mhm.
what did we say? 100 difficult multiplication questions in 10 minutes. But we are saying that this person can take double the time for equally difficult questions in division, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, how many questions do you think this person will crack in a minute? So
Sure.
this is a sample of an arithmetic question, and we give options. So these are multiple choice question type, methodology using which the person can solve it. Or take even a simple algebra. Algebra, all of us would have read about variables and the power of variable. Would have learnt about variables and power of variables. So it's a simple. You say a to the power x plus something, say plus b to the power some x plus something else, some other
Sure.
numerical value. What does this become? 4 to the power of something, right? And that x value is what you got to decipher, or you got to give the value. This is simple algebra. Again, it's applied algebra.
Mhm.
Statistics, we've all learned statistics. We've learned it in 10th, we've learned parts of it in our higher secondary as well. So in statistics, it could be questions on simple applied mean mode kind of problem statements, right? Or it could even be around interpreting some information that's given, some quantitative information that is given. Interpreting quantitative data, so that section is something that one has to practice. I mean, one should get their speed there, because that is very critical to the kind of job roles that we have. So we'll give
Mhm.
you like two companies, or a company had so much sales in this year, and it had so much sales in another year, and in that
Mhm.
sales it had these two products, right? So what do you think was the percentage change for product A versus product B? And then you'll be given a set of options to pick and choose. So
Sure.
this
So
is an
within the
example.
quantitative, got it. So within the quantitative analysis, spectrum, there's these kind of questions that you could expect from arithmetic and algebra, like you're saying. Correct.
Algebra, statistics, there'll be ratios, right?
Sure. So
All this,
everything cumulatively, probably that you've learned up to class 10
absolutely,
and forward.
absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then there
In
are
the
other sections as well.
Yeah, in the logical sections, especially in the analytical sections, right? So there, while other things are very simple, like for instance, if I replace, if I replace in a word, I replace the alphabet this by a number, analyze and tell me what will be an equivalent for a word like this. Right,
Sure,
so you got
sure.
to look at how the replacement. There are certain interesting sections around visualization. For instance, I say I have a cuboid, and this is a picture of a cuboid, and if I want to see this cuboid from a different angle, and this is what it looks like, what do you think? Where do you think vertex A in the first image has moved to in the second picture?
Sure.
Right? So it's just looking at it from a different angle. That's it. So it's
Absolutely.
basically visual appreciation and the whole visual apperception bit, right, which comes in.
Got it. Got it. And then there's a language section as well.
Yes, yes. And language section is extremely critical because learnability, our ability to learn and get into a skilling program like ours, all the three sections are equally important. But
Hmm.
if you notice in our selection process, for the language section, we've got a verbal section and we've also got an essay component,
Okay.
right? In the verbal section, like any other standard verbal, we've got all that. So we've got sentence corrections, definitions, antonyms, synonyms, prepositions, fill in the blanks. But we do have sections on reading comprehension
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
the nature of work that we do, it's critical that our ability to read and comprehend is high, right? So
Absolutely.
that's very important. And what we are testing here is at a basic level, because if you get through this and get through the selection, enter our program, in our training program there are many methods that we have to strengthen this capability for the role. Over and above this, there's an essay component. Now, in the essay component, it's just 150 words, right? What we want you to do is the topic that you choose, you are expected to stitch together your thoughts and present it. An essay, you've done this time and again as part of your school curricula. In English, there will always be an essay writing. So that's also an important test component, and we expect our applicants to take that very seriously.
Sure. Thanks, Ambika. So, for those of you who listen, we have three sections in the HCL Career Aptitude Test. This includes logical reasoning, quantitative reasoning, and of course, your language abilities, which includes both a spoken, like verbal, and essay section, as well as general sentence construction as well. So, I hope that helps a few of you who've been asking this question. So yeah, let's proceed and let's talk about the job roles in themselves, the kind of job that the person would be performing after they've completed the training. Could you shed some light on both the IT services job role and service desk?
Yes. So I think I did explain it, Sanat, at the beginning itself, right? The
Sure,
kind of
sure.
job roles we have. So we've got the tester kind of job role. Then we have, so in the testing job role, they are the testers. So people who move in as testers, there are applications that are running, or there are applications that are getting enhanced, right? So to kind of test certain modules with direction from the supervisor, they start off by simple test cases, go on to complex test cases. They write test use cases. It's important to create use cases for testing. And then they learn how to automate the entire testing. Very critical component to ensure that your software is defect free or bug free, right? So that's
Yeah,
one kind of a role. Then you've got the developer kind of role, the design kind. Okay, let me go. Developer people largely relate to. Let me talk about some roles which are not so spoken about, right? So we've got
sure.
a role which is around mechanical design, for instance. So people say, hey, what do you do in a mechanical design kind of a role, a design support executive or a design executive role? So in a design executive role, your primary responsibility, so as part of the training program, you're taught some very good CAT tools, right? And using these tools, you will have to look at you'll be given a design in a particular format, so you'll have to see how to change it to another format, or you'll have to be working on changing certain dimensions based on what is given to you as requirements, right? So you'll have to look at the specs that are provided and accordingly do that. Then there is one more aspect, which is another big thing in testing, is that you test solutions, browsers, and other such applications that hit the marketplace on usability aspects, right? Suppose I need to have this to be used by somebody who has accessibility issues, right? So is that product, is that software, is it fit for the
Mhm.
purpose of somebody who has accessibility challenges, so that we are not denying somebody their ability to use something because of other challenges that they have, right? People with accessibility issues. So that's another another variant of testing. Then let's look into an infra role. So in infra, let's say my role is that of monitoring an entire Windows setup, right, somewhere. So suddenly I realized that in a particular stack, or in a particular farm of Windows setup that's there, you see that there is a memory overflow that's happening. And when I say memory overflow, you see that the CPU, right, that utilization of the CPU itself is going to the peak,
Mhm.
and you
Mhm.
need to know how to troubleshoot that, right? So how will you go about it? You can't, and you'll see that it's probably getting caused by some other server, like a database server, but you can't go turn off a database server because the database server is feeding to some other application, right? If you switch it off, that application will go for a toss. So how do you detect that, and how do you alert people who are specialists in database side, in some other network side, and say, hey, there are potential issues that are coming up, how do we fix this, right? So you reroute these issues, and wherever it's your core, you go up, you end up troubleshooting it. So analyzing routing, so that's another important thing that you need to do, right? And in a development kind of role, so you are monitoring again these applications, and you know that this application is coming in for a major release 1 quarter down the line. So there are these major enhancements. I mean, when I say enhancement, fixes, monitoring, and other triaging work that needs to get done. So the role, and many of these terms and terminologies that I'm using for a techbee who's listening in may sound very complex, but the point is, these are the things that you learn when you go from in, you're taught all of this anyway in the classroom setup, but from the classroom, when you go into your internship phase, right? You're taught these during your on the job training by your
Sure.
supervisors, right? So, which makes you completely ready to take up these kind of tasks that come your way.
Sure. Sure. Thank you, Ambika. We have a few questions now that we'll take from the audience.
Sure.
So I'll address them to you, and of course, we'll try to answer them one by one. So one question is, what kind of projects will we work on after
And
completing the program?
what kind of projects? So these are live projects, which is customer facing projects. There are different kinds of projects.
Yeah.
So you get into a specific account driven project where you start delivering for the role for which you've got ready.
Sure. So maybe we could tell them a little bit about the kind of sectors we work with, whether it's healthcare, infrastructure, retail, telecommunications. So we have clients across the board, and you'd be placed with, one of the verticals
Yeah. Yeah.
from these.
I
Uh,
would recommend you, since you're all digital natives, you must go to the HCL Tech website, because in that website you look at the multiple industry verticals that we service globally, right? And that will also give you an idea of the nature of projects and the client space that we are in.
Yes, absolutely. And our website, it's on the ticker below. So please do follow it. So we have another question. Now we've discussed the career aptitude tests, but could you tell the viewers how they could prepare for the interview that actually happens, and what that entails?
Right. So the interview questions. So what happens during the interview process? It's to ascertain your learnability quotient, right? So in the learnability quotient, one of the important things that we always look for is responsiveness. Many a times it's not just TechBee, but when we have candidates and we are speaking to them, their ability to comprehend what we are asking and then respond to those questions. So that is a critical ask from us. It's okay if you don't know the answer to a question. Nobody knows answers for everything. It's perfectly all right. But what is important is that you don't draw a blank and you respond. And
Hmm.
through responding, you're actually participating in a conversation between you and the interviewer, right?
Sure.
So the fundamental thing is you're not going to be judged because you don't know the answer, but we do have a challenge if you don't respond to us. So responsiveness is a critical thing. You will be we will have a view of the interview, the essay that you put together. The interviewer will have access to that, so they may ask you something on your points of view that you have jotted. That's a possibility for sure. But all this is basically to enforce a couple of things. One is your learnability. And again, I emphasize on learnability because once you are through and come into the program, we work with you to ensure you're successful, right?
Hmm.
So, therefore, each of these stages are to ensure that once you get through each of these gates, which is the eligibility, the selection test, the interview process, and once you join our program, then we know that with you and us together, and we working with you, and you putting your 100% into the program, you have a success story in the making with us. So that's the whole purpose behind the rigor that goes into the selection process.
Absolutely. And thanks again, Ambika, for taking up that question. So we have, I see a few questions about the higher education programs that we have. So could you please tell us about the course options from Sastra University, BITS
Right.
Pilani, and also perhaps the delivery method, if you could touch upon that briefly?
Sure, sure. So the BCA program with Shastra or the BSc in computing and design, right, that we have created with BITS Pilani, these both these programs are called. They are actually work integrated higher education. So in this, there is a credit transfer that happens for some of the programs that we do. So in the first year of training that you do as a tech B, so in the classroom training as well as in the on the job training, there are ways and means in which we work out at least some credit points that can get transferred to your bachelor's program. This is in the BCA program. Likewise, in the BSc program also, there are generic certain submissions that we are working out as part of the electives itself so that you can get some credits. But the key thing is the subjects that have gone into either the BCA or the BSc program, they've been designed in such a way, the curriculum has been designed in such a way that you doing that will help align you with the learning goals that you have in the organization. So, which means that let's say that I have been deployed in an infra project and I am taking care of, let's say, an O365 environment, right?
Hmm.
So in that environment, there are certain, so in that environment, in that role, there are certain competencies that I need to build. It may not be directly O365, but it will be for the role, and that is the role of an analyst or the role of an administrator, right? Whichever role you go into. So, some of the subjects, especially the elective subjects that we have baked into the program, the higher education program, are aligned with the work that you do in the organization. So, that's an advantage that we want to bring to all of you when you pursue the higher education. Likewise, in the BITS program, which is a BSc, in computing and design, design because in the digital era, the transformation that has just got accelerated because of the pandemic and the global virtual workplaces that have come up, it becomes an even more important dimension that we are able to appreciate design and we are able to think design. Whether we work on designing something or not, the ability to appreciate the finer aspects of designing something, be it a piece of software, be it a piece of environment or a landscape. So those are things that are baked into the program. So when you finish your 12 months of training and you're ready and you become an employee with us, and that's when your entire counseling for the higher education program comes up. It is at that interface that the office that manages the higher education program will also counsel you, and in that counseling they will also recommend the program that is suitable for the role, because our intent is that in that 3-year journey or the 4-year journey, depending on which program you pursue, most of those subjects that you will cover, you will not only be able to internalize it, but it will also be so much relatable to the work that you do, right? So to the extent possible, that's how we have baked in the program and rolled out the program.
Sure. Thank you, Ambika, for answering that question. We also have a few other questions about when the batches will start, when they will have their exams conducted. So I'll take up one question, just to help out a little here as well. So your exams would be conducted for anyone who's waiting for that, entrance exam, the career aptitude test to be held. You need to complete your application form, after which our team will, of course, activate that test for you with a link, which you can take remotely as well. So yeah, that's that. And yeah, the next question was about when the batches will start. So please, Ambika, if you could shed some
The
light.
batch,
I do know
yeah,
that they do happen over a period of time. I mean, it's not just one batch, but yeah.
absolutely. But the batches start, it's a continuous process. So, as in when we have people who have cleared the selection process, all the processes, finished the documentation, and the joining formalities that are needed to get started, and we've got enough numbers. So, typically, we have a batch of about 25 to 30 people. So, as in when we have, we get started. So, there's nothing like we start today or we start tomorrow, but it's a continuous process. So, we do have batches that start about every month.
Sure, and I think we're planning to begin our batches as early as July and August this time around as well.
Yes, yes,
So once we do have, yeah. So once we do have that batch, we will be going live within that month,
yes,
a month or
yes,
so. So
absolutely.
yeah, I see some more questions about the fees and about the salary. So I would recommend, as Ambika has also said, I would recommend everyone to visit our website for an entire lowdown of what the fees is like, what your starting salary will be, what the entire process or eligibility criteria is. So do check out our website. It's flashing right below you. And I think with that, we've come to an end of our time that we had today. So I'm going to close this session. And Ambika, thank you again for joining us here today and sharing all the insights that we've been getting for questions that we've been getting from interested students on how they can apply, what they should prepare for on the career aptitude test. And I'm sure we're going to have many more applications after this session. So thank you. And thanks
All the
everyone.
best. Yeah, all the best to all of you who wanting to pursue this. This is a unique opportunity, and you should have the appetite for it and take it head on. So all the very best.
Sure. Thank you, everyone. Good evening and goodbye.
Good evening.